Hi everyone, it's Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and today's video expands on a question I receive all the time. How do I know if a pattern, a YouTube tutorial, or an online quilting tip is actually reliable? And you know what? That is such a great question, an important question. We live in a time where you can find thousands of quilting tutorials online. Some are fantastic and wonderfully helpful, and others, well, they can unintentionally, or maybe intentionally, lead you down the wrong path, and you end up with wasted fabric, inaccurate blocks, frustration, and the dreaded seam ripper. This is not about calling out designers or creators. There are many wonderful, experienced, conscientious quilters who write patterns, who teach on YouTube, and who share well-tested tips every single day. We're not talking about those, but it is about learning how to recognize quality instruction versus content that might be rushed, untested, or simply created by someone without enough experience to guide beginners accurately. As a pattern designer and a YouTube creator, and someone who also buys patterns and watches tutorials, I have really experienced both ends of the spectrum. Sometimes I'm thrilled, and sometimes I end up throwing in the towel halfway through the project. Can you relate to what I'm saying? So today I want to give you 8 situations along with the tools to spot red flags before you cut into your fabric, before you invest in a pattern, or before you sew along with a tutorial that leads you to disappointment. So here goes. Number 1, the disappearing block craze, and also other trendy quick tutorials. These blocks, I'm going to show you a couple: 4-patch, pinwheel, disappearing 9-patch, disappearing hourglass. They are all genuinely wonderful when they are taught correctly. I've made several disappearing block quilts. I've taught the assembly process to beginning quilters. And you know what? I really love the finished quilts. But online, you will find all sorts of video tutorials and patterns claiming the disappearing whatever name that are no more than rushed videos, random cutting diagrams, or tutorials that skip important steps or neglect those essential cautions along the way. And it is so frustrating, especially for a new quilter. So how can you tell if you're going to create your masterpiece or if you're going to get taken? I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. First of all, this is a pinwheel, obviously. The disappearing pinwheel block, basically you take and you cut the block vertically on each side of the center and horizontally on each side of the center. And then there are several different ways that you can mix them up in order to create a beautiful block and sew it back together again. It's really easy and it looks really intricate, but it's pretty easy to come together. A disappearing 4-patch is even easier, and I really like the finished product. You just take a 4-patch block, you cut it again on each side. You can decide if you want skinny or if you want it to be a little bit wider. You cut on each side of the center horizontally and vertically, and you come up with this when you sew the pieces back together again. Another example that I just love, this one. This is one that I made where the strips are a little bit thinner going across, meaning that I cut closer to the center, but I sewed them back together again, and this was my disappearing 4-patch as well. You can see that when you go from a 4-patch into something like this quickly, it's kind of fun, first of all, to see what you're going to come up with, and you can mix and match the pieces and do whatever you want to do in order to create these blocks. But you have to be careful when you pick a tutorial or a pattern that it's a good one. And so how do we know that it's a good one? First of all, when you are just cutting straight, that's easy. Everything is still straight in the pattern, and then you sew the pieces back together again. But for some reason, these disappearing blocks, this craze, people are taking all sorts of blocks and cutting them in all sorts of directions. And what happens is eventually, if you are cutting these on the diagonal, you have bias edges and bias edges that you're putting back together again, and that can lead to distortion. Does your pattern warn you about that? Does your pattern go into detail about those little tips that you need to incorporate into your reassembly of your block so that you don't have a distorted block or a wavy block or a block that is the wrong size simply because of the way that you have pieced it back together again? Blocks can stretch, they can ripple, they can bubble, and as I said, they can finish the wrong size or lopsided based on the instruction you read. So keep in mind that a reputable instructor or pattern or YouTube video will warn you when an issue may arise that can affect the outcome of your block or your quilt assembly. If the tutorial just glosses over these things, it may not be an issue for an experienced quilter, but as a beginner, you may have difficulties trying to follow along and create that perfect block. Number 2, computer-generated pattern images or AI tutorials. Here's the question you want to ask. Have they been tested or not? You know, technology is amazing. I use diagrams and digital mock-ups too. But the issue isn't the diagram, it's whether the design has ever been tested in real fabric. So look at this pattern right here that I have. Beautiful pattern, obviously a generated pattern. It is not in fabric, it's a drawing. But when you have something like this, I can actually give you the instructions on how to create each of these blocks. I can tell you how to put it together into a quilt top. I can give you all the measurements, but you know what? If I haven't tested it out with fabric and cutting the pieces myself, there is a huge chance that there could be an error that I would never catch ahead of time, only until you told me there's a big mistake in my pattern. So an AI generated block or video does not guarantee accurate math. It tells you right on it. If you're trying to use AI, it'll say AI can make mistakes. It doesn't guarantee correct measurements. It doesn't guarantee logical construction order or seam allowances or even a block that will finish to the right size. It doesn't know that. So you have to be so careful. I followed instructions that were clearly generated by AI or by a designer who heavily relied on computer tools, and when the pieces didn't fit, that is an issue. Another issue that you may have with an AI generated pattern is sometimes we find that not only was the pattern generated by AI, but there's nobody behind it to stand behind it if there's an issue. There was no support, no corrections when there was a mistake, and no way to reach the creator. These are huge red flags because reliable creators sew their own samples. I always make my quilts 3 times. They always have pattern testers, or they, as I said, have tested them several times to make sure they work. They show photos in the pattern of actual quilts, and I'm going to show you this pattern of mine. This is my Jelly Roll Bento Box quilt block pattern. Now, if you look at this, this is the quilt that I made right here. I have the quilt. I also have some generated images here that I've just drawn just because it's easier for you to see on the pattern when I do that. But when I am finally going to put that pattern together into a quilt top, this is my quilt. This is the one that I created, and this finished quilt in the end, as well as the one on the front, is the finished quilt, so I know it works. That is so important. If you only see a computerized mock-up and no real quilt exists, proceed carefully. That doesn't mean that there's a problem with it. It just means there could be, and before you frustrate yourself or waste time, money, and fabric, you'll want to make sure that this goes together accurately and quickly. Test a block and see. Number 3, disorganized or overly compressed pattern layouts. Okay, so this is a beef that I have, and I'm sure many of you do as well. Sometimes you'll go to a website, someone's website, where they have a pattern or a tutorial, a visual tutorial on that pattern, and it is so filled with ads and so filled with all sorts of information on there that's not related to the pattern, you can't even find the pattern. It's really difficult to follow along with a pattern when you have chaos, or if the site or pattern page or video is chaotic. You know what I'm talking about. A pattern that maybe has instructions all squeezed into a little tiny space because they're trying to save on money as they're printing it out. Or maybe the steps are out of order. I've had patterns where they've had the steps out of order. Maybe the cutting instructions don't match the diagrams. Maybe there are random tips, as I said, that interrupt the actual construction steps, and that can be an issue. You lose track of where you are. Maybe the pattern doesn't have any page numbers. Maybe the illustrations aren't clear, or there's no finished block measurements. Maybe there's no logical flow when it comes to the pattern, and it feels like a puzzle with pieces that are missing. I want to show you an example of that. Okay, this is my block. This is just a sampler block that I did, and it's a heart block. It's really cute. It has 5 pages. For this simple block, it has 5 pages. Why? Because I have details about it. I have fabric selection, I have the cutting requirements, I have the assembly of the different pieces, the detailed assembly of the entire block, all the way through the pattern, so that when you get this, you know how to put this block together. Okay, so this, 5 pages, yes. Fortunately, it's downloadable, so when you have the pattern and you download it, then you can print out what you want. You don't have to print the whole thing out if you don't need to. But look at this one, same pattern. And this is, here it is, the heart pattern. It gives you the dimensions. But look, I wanted to squeeze this all into a half a piece of paper instead of 5 pages. And all the info is here, but try and follow something like this. I cannot tell you how many patterns I have come across with this very issue, where everything is all pushed into one small area and I have to figure out how to put it together. And sometimes I just can't based on those instructions. So well-written patterns and tutorials present steps in a clear sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, bullet points in between. They show diagrams that actually match what you're sewing. They include accurate cutting charts, as I showed you on my pattern. They avoid cramming too much into one page, and they include both text and visual aids when you are assembling the block. In addition, they show real fabric examples, not just digital art. This is exactly what I strive to do in Joyful and Merry Quilting patterns and workshops and courses and tutorials. I want to make sure you get it, that you understand, that you can follow along and you don't have to say to me, I don't know where you went with that. You know where I went because you can follow the steps, and I think that is really important when it comes to a pattern designer and what they're offering to those who are making the block or the quilt or whatever. Number 4, beware of the free pattern. Now, I do it myself. I offer free patterns, free PDFs all the time, just basic instruction that you might want to do to create a unit or a block. I do that a lot because I want to offer that to you. But you know what? Not everybody is offering that to you as a gift. Social media accounts that are out there that say free pattern, there's sewing, there's quilting, there's crocheting, there's knitting, there's crafting, etc. They can be spam. Remember a while back there were social media pages and posts where someone would say, oh, look at this is my quilt, my husband says it's ugly, what do you think? And the pattern is in the comments. And they'd go to the pattern and you would click on it, and it would take you some place where their pattern was not there, and there would be ads and who knows what. It was a scam. That's what they did. They might say, I made this for my daughter and she hated it. What do you think? And it turns out that wasn't even a quilt that they made. They got it somewhere off the internet and posted it there, someone else's quilt. So you have to be really careful. The link in the pattern didn't take you to the pattern picture because it was a scam. Well, we all caught on and everybody was like really happy. We figured that one out. So guess what? New scam. So here's what the new scam is that I just discovered. I saw a post on social media and I was wondering because it looked suspicious to me. And I thought, is this a scam or is this spam or whatever? So I checked into it and guess what? Yes, it was. And here's what I had. There was a picture. It was a free pattern site and there's tons of them out there. Don't let those get to you. They are not always free and we have to be so careful, but they're so enticing, and they'll have a beautiful block like this one, and I cut off all the information on it, but this was the block. It said it was a free pattern, and there was a link in the comments, and it said that, go to the link in the comments, and this is what came up. When I clicked on the link, you could see behind, it looked like, oh, maybe there's a good pattern back there. I don't know. Maybe it looks like PDF here, and it's got the name of the pattern on it, so it was enticing, but this was the kicker. Right here, it says unlock for more content. Take action to continue accessing the content on this site, and it will take you to a place where they will get your information. Don't do it. This is very likely a scam, or at least a high-risk site, rather than a legitimate free pattern source. And here's why that is, and this is from the research that I did on it. First of all, this site has a low trust or high risk score. That's a sign of a scam. Independent scam rating services have given this site a low trust score, 38 out of 100. Well, that's kind of scary. Flagging it as questionable or controversial and possibly tied to a spam or suspicious behavior online is what we're looking at here. It doesn't appear to be a recognized or reputable quilting resource. I don't know for positive, but I'm not willing to take the risk. The second point is there have been reports of phony links and ads to this particular site. Other crafters have reported Facebook posts linking to dubious external sites where you have to watch ads and provide information just to get their free content. What this told me to do is, if I filled out all the information they were asking for, they'd let me look at their site for 24 hours for free, and then I couldn't look at it anymore. A common tactic that is used is they generate revenue or they harvest data rather than genuinely delivering free craft patterns. So they get your info, but you get nothing or very little back from them. In addition, you can't find any federal registrations or licenses that tell you this is a legitimate business. When you go to the site, it gives you the impression that you will be able to access all these free patterns, but often it just doesn't happen no matter how many of their hoops you jump through, providing personal information, or as in this one, write me an ad, all sorts of things. We don't do that. Just avoid those sites. So here's what matters to quilters, and here are the risks. And I think this is probably, out of the whole video, this is the most important thing I can tell you. Personal data harvesting still happens. Sites like this often will ask for your email address or your social login or other information under the pretext of giving you free access, which then gets sold or used for spam. And there's no accountability because the owner is hidden and the site isn't affiliated with known designers. There's no recourse if the patterns are fake, stolen, or used improperly. So don't go there. Now, does that mean that every website that asks you for your email address is not legit? We ask you. We need to know you are a real person. So before we give you a product, we ask you for your email address. That's just common knowledge for a reputable designer. It's these scammers that do these types of things that give us a bad name. So what do you do about that? How do you avoid that situation? Well, I'll tell you about that in an upcoming point. But let's move on for now. Number 5, videos with missing steps. Online quilting content is really fast-paced. There are short videos out there and reels out there that tend to focus on the fun reveal without showing the pressing instructions, the seam allowances, the trimming, the bias considerations, the measurement checks, or any mistakes that you might want to avoid. They are fast, and you watch those and it looks great. But have you ever followed one of those tutorials and all of a sudden you say, how did we get from here to there? All of a sudden we've had these pieces and they've turned into this beautiful block and I don't know where to go in between. Chances are the most important steps were skipped. Good instructors will walk you through everything, even the boring parts, because those parts are where the accuracy comes from. Number 6, no finished measurements. This is a huge red flag. Whether it's a written pattern or it's a video, you should always be told the unfinished block size, the finished block size, the final quilt size, the size of the borders, the amount of binding needed. If any of those are missing, proceed carefully. That doesn't mean it's not legit, but you want to be careful because those are all things that are very important. Number 7, no experience or no credentials, just a camera and idea. This is another red flag. Now, everybody starts somewhere. I know I did. And there are many new creators who work really hard to do a beautiful job, and we get better the more we do. But there are also people who have never made a block before. They don't test their project. They may give cutting advice that's just simply incorrect. They may be inappropriately using their tools. I think I told you about this before, where I watched a video where someone had her rotary cutter open as she was swinging around on her finger as she was talking. It petrified me. But that's kind of a telltale sign that maybe that person isn't as experienced as we would like. So signs of inexperience include mixing up finished and unfinished. Maybe they don't even give the measurements or they have them incorrectly listed. Maybe they are trimming their units and they trim them to the wrong size and you see that. Maybe they're demonstrating unsafe rotary cutting techniques. Maybe they haven't pressed their seams in the right direction or at all. Maybe they're encouraging unnecessary fabric waste. Reliable instructors don't just show steps. They teach the why, not just the what. That is so important. And this is exactly the approach I take in my YouTube videos. If you're not familiar with them, go ahead and take a look at some. I mean, I have videos on how to avoid cutting off points on your stars, a fast, foolproof method. I have how to miter corners the easy way. We've gotten hundreds of thousands of views on that because it tells you the step-by-step instruction with pictures and with real fabric. How about how to press for flat seams and so many other things to give you accuracy and confidence. That's what's important. And of course, I also have quilting courses like the Ultimate Quilting Foundation course, From Novice to Confident Beginner, or Aim for the Stars. They take you step by step so you always understand the why of how something goes together, how it works. Now, you may come across a pattern or a video that offers no support, no updates, no corrections if there's a mistake. That is a major indicator of reliability. How does the creator handle updates and questions? Quality designers and teachers will respond to your emails. They'll answer comments. They will update PDFs when mistakes are discovered. They'll post the corrections. They can be contacted. You can always contact Mary at joyfulandmaryquilting.com with a question about my patterns or something you want to ask me about. I will provide support when you're stuck. If the creator doesn't have a website, no email, no real name, no way to reach them, that's a sign to pause before investing in their product. And my final tip is your best protection is to get to know your designers and your instructors. When you find a creator who explains things clearly, offers step-by-step guidance, shows real fabric examples, has experience, demonstrates skills safely, provides accurate patterns, posts helpful YouTube videos, has thorough, logical courses, tests their instructions before they print them out, updates and corrects things when needed, and builds a community around learning, stick with them. Trust grows from consistency and care. And there you have it, a quick guide to spotting quality quilting instruction, whether it's a pattern, a YouTube tutorial, or a tip you saw on social media at 2 a.m. while dreaming about your next project. You know what? Quilting is supposed to be fun, and with the right teacher and the right instructions, it absolutely is. If you want clear, helpful, real-world, tested guidance, be sure to check out more videos here on this channel. And look into the courses I offer for beginners and confident beginners, as well as intermediate quilters. Comment below on your experiences with patterns or video tutorials. I love hearing your stories. Click like if you like the video, subscribe if you'd like to see more content, and thank you so much for watching. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be Mary.